Here.
Mr. Dawson, Ms. Downs,
Here.
Mr. Caderas, Mr. Kurtz, Mr. Natale.
Here.
Mr. Strollo. Ms. Blake.
Here.
Mr. Hilsinger. Here. Mr. Selma. Here. Mr. Affey. Here. Mr. Caderas.
Mr. Caderas.
Oh.
Here.
Oh, he's here now.
Okay, we have a quorum. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, we have 3 items on the agenda tonight, and all 3 of them are for Metro Realty. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Nice to see you all again, and happy holidays. For the record, my name's Andrea Gomes. I'm an attorney at Hinckley Allen here tonight on behalf of the applicant. My colleague, Attorney Hollister, who you saw last month, could not be here today. Incidentally, he's actually stuck in an airport right now, so I think I got the better deal out of that. But I'm here, obviously, in his stead on behalf of the team. With me tonight are Ben Tripp, Kyle Richards, and Jeff Sager of Metro Realty, Tom Daly, our consulting professional engineer with SLR Consulting, Trisha Gibney of the Arc of Southington, and Mark Vertucci, our consulting traffic engineer with Fuss & O'Neill. Since November 13th, a number of new items have been added to the public hearing record. The commission should have a November 21st, I believe it is, supplemental letter for Mr. Vertucci, essentially adding or answering, some outstanding questions on traffic from the November 13th meeting. Last week, we submitted a minor proposed revision to the proposed assisted housing district regulation into the record as well. And then late last week, we, as well as minor revisions to the site plan, And also late last week, we received the traffic peer review requested by the commission. I believe if it has not happened already, it will happen in just a few moments. We have a response to that in writing that Mr. Vertucci has put together that we'll be handing out to the commission. And the commission will also have some flow test data results or flow test results that we will be going over everything tonight throughout the course of the presentation, but just wanted to make sure the commission has everything before them. With that in mind, and given the discussion that happened at the last hearing, the goal for tonight is really to just answer the commission's outstanding questions and requests for information since the November 13th meeting, and anything else that comes up tonight as well. To begin, I believe it would be helpful to the commission as well as to the members of the public to review just briefly the commission's purview under General Statutes 830G. Commission knows it's Connecticut's affordable housing statute. The main point is that because the applicant here has agreed to preserve a portion of the units for moderate and low income households, the application should be approved unless there's evidence in the record that the site plan will create a substantial public health and safety concern that cannot be resolved by reasonable changes to the plan and which outweigh Cheshire's need for affordable housing. This is, as we've previously discussed together, a more narrow and different standard than the commission usually employs in non-830G zoning applications. Drilling down just a bit further, 830G allows for 2 different types of applications. We have the set-aside application, which is where a developer agrees to preserve 30% of its units for affordable households. And then we have what is called assisted housing, meaning that the developer has received government financing to support the development of the community. And that's what we've proposed here. The advantage to the town with an assisted housing application under 830G is that the town gets credit on the state's affordable housing list for all of the units, both the income/rent restricted units and the market rate units. In addition, the benefit, as was discussed last time, is that it provides for much needed affordable housing, and in this particular case, supportive housing as well for the community. With that in mind, I'll just touch on a couple brief items in the supplemental materials, and then I'll hand it over to Mr. Tripp. First, as I mentioned, we submitted a minor proposed revision to the Assisted Housing District regulation. If the commission looks at the top of page 2, it should see some red text. We did so in response to the commission's concerns at the November meeting that regarding the impact of our proposed community on abutting industrially zoned properties. As the commission noted, the industrially zoned properties in town have greater setbacks than if they are abutting a residentially zoned property. So what we've done in this proposed revision is make clear that an AHD, Assisted Housing District zoned property, will not trigger those greater setbacks. I did speak with Mr. Glidden in advance of submitting that formally into the record, and he okayed the proposed language. Second, Mr. Glidden noted in his staff report that the applicant should conduct a fire flow test to ensure adequate water pressure for the community. We did order that test, and the commission has the test results in front of it. I won't even pretend to try and analyze what the results are. Mr. Daly will do that in just a moment. But the test was unfortunately not performed on the exact hydrant that we needed it performed on for this site. Again, Mr. Daly will go into this in more detail during his portion of the presentation, but the main thrust of this is that the results for that nearby hydrant and other information that was available through the town suggest that there should be no concern with water pressure for the site. We would suggest to the commission that if it's so inclined, we condition its approval on the submission of the fire flow data or fire flow test results to the town as a prerequisite to obtaining building permit approval. Doing so would protect the town because obviously if we either fail to submit that information or if the results are not satisfactory, we wouldn't be able to move forward with the development. And I did just briefly discuss this with Mr. Glidden in advance of the meeting as well. That being said, we do have the appropriate test scheduled for tomorrow. So someone will be on site and will be able to submit that hopefully as a condition of approval to the commission. So I will hand it over to Mr. Tripp from Metro in just a moment. He'll be addressing a number of the comments and questions posed by the commission at the last hearing. Mark Vertucci from Fuss & O'Neill will then get up and discuss his supplemental traffic letter, the peer review, and our response thereto. Not to take the wind out of Mr. Vertucci's sails, but the peer reviewer, Mr. Adams, agreed with Fuss & O'Neill's procedures and methodologies. And the key here is that he did not raise any substantial public health and safety concerns with the proposed community. Again, Mark will go into that in more detail in just a moment. I'll then ask Mr. Daly to come up to touch quickly on the fire flow results, as well as the minor changes to the site plan since the November meeting. Tricia Gibney will come up from the Arc of Southington to discuss the supportive housing aspect, again, of the application. And then I will respectfully request a few minutes to wrap up at the end. Of course, entire team here for questions. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I will hand it over to Mr. Tripp. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. For the record, my name is Ben Tripp on behalf of the applicant. So we can go to the first slide, Mike. So I would like to address a few of the comments and concerns that were raised by this commission at the last hearing that we attended. They fall into a couple of different main categories, I would say. And the first, it was a question I heard from a couple members of the commission, was whether or not there really was a need for affordable housing in town, and whether and how this proposed development would benefit the town of Cheshire. I think they're important questions, so I do want to make sure that we answer those and get them on the record. So the first place I started was looking at the affordable housing plan. It's a plan that was drafted and approved by this commission about a little over a year ago. I guess you could call it the town of Cheshire's official policy as it pertains to affordable housing. And what it says in this plan, I'll just read the last sentence here. That overall, the plan calls for, the goal is to increase the availability of affordable housing in town. That's the goal of the plan. The last sentence of this particular paragraph, which is included in the plan, is that the Cheshire Planning and Zoning Commission believes that increasing access to affordable housing in Cheshire benefits the persons in such housing and our community in a number of ways. So we can go to the next slide. So then it lists the ways in which the access to affordable housing would benefit the community. I'm not going to read this word for word, but things like maintaining our seniors in town, which I think is going to be relevant as we go on throughout the presentation. Economic development, a diverse housing market enables larger groups of the population to purchase or reside within the community. It will strengthen the local workforce, which entices employers to expand or relocate to Cheshire. And then things like housing stability and health, they are all well thought out and meaningful reasons why access to affordable housing would benefit the town, as is the outcome of the plan that this commission approved. So we can go to the next slide, Mike. So that's a policy, and I think it's always important to consider whether or not available data supports the conclusions that were reached with to get to that policy. So this is some information I showed this commission last time. Again, there's over 15,000 jobs in town right now. The average pay of those jobs is $64,000. That average job qualifies for an affordable apartment in the proposed community. That would be one of the 80% AMI apartments. And what that means is, that's the average job, but it implies that there are thousands of jobs in town that would qualify for some level of affordable housing at the proposed development. You can see, particularly areas like healthcare and social assistance, transportation and warehousing. Those are two of the main employers in town when you think about Bozzuto's and Whole Foods Distribution and Macy's Logistics. And, so I again, demonstrated that the availability of housing for whom these employees would qualify, it's just, again, I think the comment last time was, how can we guarantee that those individuals who work at these places and work in Cheshire will be the ones who benefit from the affordable housing? And of course, the answer is we cannot guarantee who's going to live in the community. What we can do is provide the best information that we have that would support a conclusion that this type of housing, there is a need for it. There is a source within town for people who would then occupy those apartments. So while I can't guarantee who will live at this proposed community, what I did and what was requested by this commission was to look at some demographic information from other communities that we've developed and own and operate. So we have 5 communities that are not age restricted. So I limited out my analysis to those communities. These are all, central Connecticut, non-age restricted, mixed income or affordable communities. And so what the outcome was, the biggest component of the resident at these communities they were a combination of teachers, medical, I guess, some employed in the medical field in some way, or employed by a local government, some sort of local government services. That totaled 36% of the residents. The next largest bucket were people who were collecting some combination of retirement benefits and or Social Security. Between those two, and I think that that's interesting because oftentimes we think of non-age restricted communities as really just being families, when in actuality we've got a quarter of the residents here. They are seniors who are collecting who are on fixed incomes and are needing a more affordable residence. The reason why I think that number is as high as it is because the way that we design our developments. For example, the proposed development here, we have 6 buildings, which half of the apartments are 1-floor living, direct entrance from the exterior, sets up perfectly for an age in place or for a relocating senior. And then the 7th building is a 3-story building with complete elevator service access. So again, convenient for that either aging in place or senior relocation on fixed income. And then another question was, I think, or the implication was, how do we know that this is going to benefit the people who live in or work in Cheshire? And so we backed out that 25% who are retired. And so we looked at, of the people working, how many of those people work in the town where they're living? And we found the answer there is 34%. So that's demographic data from other communities that we own and operate in places like Farmington, Avon, Berlin, South Windsor. So now I wanted to look at demographic information, current information for households in Cheshire. So right now there are more than 10,000 households in Cheshire. More than 1,100 of those households would qualify for one of the apartments that's below 50% of area median income. Almost 1,500 additional households would qualify for an 80% AMI unit. So that's between 50% and 80% of AMI. So when you do the math, that's 26%. That's more than 1 in 4 household in town right now that would qualify and therefore benefit from this proposed development. And while we're talking about benefits to the town, I think it is also important to consider, practical benefits with respect to achieving the goals that are set for each of our communities under the 8-30G Connecticut General Statute. I think we're all probably familiar, and if you're not, I'm happy to answer questions, but there are 2 goals that are put in front of commissions and in front of towns. There's the ultimate goal of 10% of the housing stock to be deed restricted affordable. That puts the town on the exempt list, where the Connecticut General Statute 8-30G, that burden of proof and the health and safety component, is no longer relevant, and we're adhering to existing zoning standards. But there's another component which provides towns with a temporary 4-year moratorium when a certain number of what are called housing equivalency points are earned as a result of the approval and construction of affordable housing. So I put together a calculation based on our proposed affordability split on how many points this proposed development would earn the town toward that moratorium. And you earn, it's not a 1-for-1 count the way the 10% is. You earn points based on the level of affordability, 2.5 points for 30% AMI, et cetera. So this, even though we're talking about 71 apartments, you would earn 119.75 points toward that housing equivalency points, which would count toward that 2% temporary moratorium. So that equates to 1.15%, where your goal is 2%. So this development in and of itself would get you more than halfway toward that 2% goal. You also have other communities in town that are either under construction or recently completed, thinking of Hazel Drive. I think it's 23 deed restricted there. We've got East Mitchell, which is 11. The Realty Drive recently approved, 30% there. I think that's 21 total. So when I just did back of envelope math because I didn't have exact affordability data for each of those developments, but when you add this 1.15% with the either under construction or recently completed, you get very near or perhaps beyond that 2% goal. Potentially, I would have to have town staff and an attorney do the math, but you would be either very near or surpass that 2% goal and achieve that temporary moratorium. All right, so let's go to the next slide. So that was the first, I'd say, category of question or concern, which is what is the benefit to the town as a result of this development? The second area of question or concern was why here? What does this? There's some sense that this was not an appropriate site for this development, and so, I disagree, and I think we have information to explain why we specifically landed at this location, not traffic related, but just specific to the location as a quality location for multifamily housing. So the site is about a mile away from what I mentioned, the 2 largest employers in town, employers that specifically create jobs that would employ individuals who could qualify for this affordable housing in the Whole Foods Distribution Center in Bozzuto's. That's not to say that we're proposing that this is a walkable community. I mean, as we know, there's not significant sidewalk infrastructure in this area. The community is a decidedly car-centric community, so availability, so proximate available housing, affordable housing to these major employers is still a benefit, because individuals simply deserve the opportunity to have affordable, high-quality housing near their place of employment. We can go to the next slide. So also, this is probably hard to see, but I just want to remind that the reason that we're here is because we were approached by the Arc of Southington as a preferred provider of affordable and supportive housing. So the whole site search revolved around working with them to find what's the best site for this community. Now, for regional funding reasons, which I don't really want to get into, but I can, I guess. But the development needed to be in Cheshire; it couldn't be in Southington. So with that in mind, we were looking for a site that was in the northern part of town, easily accessible by the Arc of Southington. Their office is in Plantsville, so direct access down Route 10. They're providing transportation to the individuals that they support. So the site location, from the supportive housing perspective, they were excited about the fact that it was located in the northern part of town and it was easily accessible. And then finally, so just a half a mile north, and I'm certain that you're all familiar with this, approved master plan, mixed use community. I think, speaking with the economic development director, all said and done with what's approved currently, we're talking about north of $150 million development. There are, in addition to the residences and the multifamily, there's retail, shopping, convenience, grocery store. This is the type of place that we would love to locate multifamily housing proximate to. It's going to be a fantastic development, the largest, development kind of anywhere nearby. So not only does it will it provide amenities to the potential future residents of this development, but importantly, it'll provide employment opportunities specifically for that supportive housing community by way of, convenience store, grocery store. So frankly, it's something that I think is very exciting for the town of Cheshire, and we would be grateful to be located so close to it. And then the last element of the location, the site specifically, is what we were able to create by way of this particular site in terms of an attractive community that's designed within the density and the coverage and all of the bulk standards that are existing within the Cheshire zoning regulations for affordable housing. So we're able to mass out a sensible, I would say responsible site plan that adheres to the sensibilities of the town in terms of a 2-story colonial elevation with direct access, no common hallways. And we can go on to the next slide. And again, specifically the fact that there's a 100-foot front yard here. So we were able to maintain, or we propose, if it's in the the commission's interest, to maintain the existing mature vegetation, that first 100 feet from the street. So the potential to provide, considerable, if not entire, screening of the development from Highland. We can go to the next slide. So again, just showing that, and our civil engineer, Tom Daly, has alternate plans suggesting ways that we could retain the majority of this vegetation to benefit the screening element of the site. And so I just wanted to remind everybody what we really are talking about here in terms of the quality of the development. This is the development that, Little Brook here is the development that the proposed development has been modeled after: identical buildings, colonial style, direct entrance. As you heard last week, I toured a few members of the community who were interested in the development, and I can assure you that this development and our attention to detail with respect to construction, maintenance, property management, we endeavor to create something that this town would truly consider an asset, would truly be proud of by the time we're all said and done. It's something that we found to be the case in every community that we've worked. So with that, I will hand it over to Mark.
I'm sorry, can I ask you a question before you start? So
Yes,
we're looking at 13 market rate units,
13.
and how many, we talked about the assisted
Yes.
portion being raised up to the state max, which is what?
The state max for this development would be 18, with given 71 apartments. And I spoke with Tricia, the CEO of the Arc of Southern Union. We would need additional, right now the commitment from DDS, who provides the funding for the supportive housing, is for 15 apartments. So I'm 100% willing to go up to 18. Tricia said, and she can speak to this as well, says that she's willing to go up to 18 as well, provided that we can get the additional funding from the department.
Okay, and as far as the affordable, so is there a max from the state for the number of affordable units?
We're not talking about
We're not talking about the assisted. We're talking about just the affordable units.
So there's not a max. We go up to 80% because so we will be competing for funding with other affordable housing developers for this particular development. There's a document that's called the Qualified Allocation Plan, which is basically just a scoring rubric that all developers submit, and it has to do with your location, it has to do with how affordable you make your development. There's all these different categories and criteria. And so we've done 20 of these, and we understand how to score the most points to be the most competitive to receive the award. And what you need at least 20% of your units to be market rate in order to get the maximum points for that category, which is why you effectively have a maximum affordable of 80%.
When you're talking total units for that appeals list, it says 2022, we got another 400 plus units coming on.
Yeah,
So your 1.5 is going to drop down to 0.9.
it'll change year over year for sure. And this is just the most recently available
And including
housing
the-
appeals list number on the CHF, the body that governs this.
Yeah, so that's just old data that really means nothing when this comes on board.
Well, it won't mean nothing. It'll be the basis for which the next year's information is applied. And, certainly within that, there may be other affordable, maybe other deed restricted CHFA single family homes. The numbers do change from year to year. This is just the most recently available data that I had access to.
Going to put in the calculations of the homes that are being built that we know that are coming in. So we got a real number here. It's almost like what we did with the accidents, right? 3 accidents. We got to stack that big of them.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Ben. Good evening. Again, I'm Mark Vertucci. I'm a senior transportation engineer at Fuss & O'Neill. We're located at 146 Hartford Road in Manchester. I'm also a registered professional engineer in Connecticut and also a registered professional traffic operations engineer through ITE. Tonight, I just wanted to briefly review a couple things with you. We did submit a supplemental traffic information letter on November 21st. So I want to briefly go through that. That was primarily responding to some questions and requests for additional information that you had at the last planning and zoning meeting. Also wanted to talk about the peer review memo that we had received just last week from Barton and LoJudas, and also touch on some additional crash data that we obtained from the town police department, which also came in since the last meeting as well. First, on the supplemental traffic information memo, there were some questions on the traffic volumes that we used at the last meeting. So we did compare our latest or the traffic counts that we conducted as part of this study with the latest available counts conducted by the Department of Transportation. Those were obtained at the intersection of West Johnson and Johnson Streets. That's where the nearest DOT count was. And what we found was that those volumes were very close to ours. There were also a request that we break these volumes down by heavy vehicle percentages on Route 10. We provided a pretty detailed breakdown of that in this letter that I won't get into, but I will just say that overall the heavy vehicle percentages on Route 10, roughly 4% of the traffic stream, are entirely normal for an arterial and what we would expect to see for a road such as Route 10. On the peak hour volumes, same thing. Our turning movement counts that we conducted this year were cross-referenced with May 2022 data from DOT. Our counts were actually higher than the DOT counts and more conservative. So again, we're very comfortable with the count data that was used in our study. On the next slide, I'm going to talk a minute about, sorry for all the words, but the crash data analysis. So we went ahead and, as I mentioned before, we obtain our crash data from the Yukon Crash Repository. This is a statewide standard for collection and analysis of crash data. It's what the DOT uses on a regular basis. So we had looked at the latest 3 years of data. What we did is we extended that to 5 years. We looked all the way back to January 1st of 2018, and then all the way up to the present day, which was actually at the time we submitted the memo, I believe present was November 17. So we looked at the latest 5 years. We also extended our limits and went all the way down to Schoolhouse Road. And again, we did not see anything that different than the findings that we came up with in our initial traffic study. The crash patterns at the signalized intersections in the study area are typical for what we would see at signals. They're primarily rear end collisions, nothing out of the ordinary. There were not any abnormal crash patterns on the segments of the roadway in between the signals either, most notably the 1,500-foot segment between Johnson, West Johnson, and Fieldstone Court. We had 4 driveway turning crashes reported in that data. The town data, a little bit more. There were 6 crashes. But again, given that segment of road, the volume on Route 10, the number of driveways there, and the fact we've looked back 5 years, that's not a lot of crashes on that segment. Most importantly, I think, to look at is the structural driveway. That's the development across the street from us. We're lining our driveway up with that drive. They have the same site distance that we have. They have not had a turning crash at their driveway in or out in the last 5 years of data. There was a mention of 2 fatal crashes in the area. So we did look into those. One of them was south near the Schoolhouse Road intersection. That did not appear in our initial data because it was outside of our study area. But that crash was caused by driver negligence. One driver was speeding, one obeyed traffic control when pulling out there, and it also occurred at a very late night in a low traffic condition. So there was nothing there that indicated a design problem with the road. And the second crash was not included in the data because it was part of a state police investigation. That crash involved someone evading the police and driving in excess of 75 miles per hour up the road. I believe the driver was charged with manslaughter in that one. So again, not anything indicative of a safety concern with the road there. These are isolated incidents. As I mentioned, we obtained town police data as well.
The pedestrian getting run over too. You didn't mention that one. That was another one.
We also reviewed town police data, and as I mentioned, we obtained that data for the same time period, the latest 5 years of crash data. Again, similar findings to the Yukon crash data. In fact, there were less crashes overall with the town data, 24 less crashes. And I believe this is because the town does not get all of the state police reports. But overall, nothing remarkable with the town data. Next, I wanted to talk about the school bus access. So that was another concern that was brought up. We did talk with Luther Miller, transportation coordinator, the Board of Education. And he mentioned that the school buses will stop on the northbound side of the road. So that is the side that the site is on. They will stop there, so students will not be required or not need to walk into the roadway at all. They can get right onto the bus. But in addition, that's a safe operation as it is. But in order to make it safer, we are going to be providing a pull-off for safer loading and unloading next to the driveway. And Tom Daly is going to review the site plan modifications that were made, so he'll show you that in a little bit. But there will be a pull-off, so the bus will be entirely out of the travel lane. Also, we will be extending sidewalks down the driveway and providing a standing area where that bus would pull off. In addition, if you can move to the next slide. Also, since the last meeting, we have proposed a left turn restriction. There are some concerns with the safety of, despite the lack of crash data at the structural driveway, there was some concern about left turns coming out of the driveway. So we've proposed to restrict the left turns out. That'll be done by signage and a raised island that will be configured in a restrictive fashion to channelize people to turn right out of the driveway. So this results in more efficient operations for traffic leaving the site, level service A, and safer operations. If somebody wanted to take a left and go south on Route 10, they have the ability to make a left at West Johnson and go down Reinhardt Road and come back out on Schoolhouse Road. And we did look at those intersections as well. And with a minimal amount of traffic we'd be adding to those, they would continue to operate safely and efficiently with that small amount of additional traffic. On the next slide, I just wanted to touch on the traffic peer review memo. We just received this late last week from Barton and Lojudas. And just to give you the overall summary, the peer reviewer concurred with the methodology that we used in our study. They concurred that the study was done in accordance with industry standards. They concurred this site will be a very low traffic generator. They were in agreement with the intersections we studied, also the distribution of traffic that we used. And they also concurred with the findings of the crash analysis and that there were no abnormal crash patterns in the study area. And they concurred with the traffic operations analysis as well. They had two recommendations. One of them was to consider advanced vehicle detection on Route 10 at the West Johnson intersection. That intersection actually recently had its detection upgraded. There is a video detector and a radar detector installed on those mast arms now. The latest signal plan of record we obtained from DOT was not updated to show that information. So I don't have confirmation that there is advanced vehicle detection in effect there, but the equipment on that arm is capable of the advanced detection that the peer reviewer is talking about. So if it's not already in place, we can certainly coordinate with DOT during the encroachment permit process to ensure those advanced detection zones are incorporated into the traffic signal operation. The other recommendation was to go out and verify and recheck the site distance analysis, which I did myself this weekend. I went out and measured both stopping site distance as well as intersection site distance. And I want to explain the difference between the two. Stopping site distance is for an approaching vehicle on Route 10 northbound. So it's the distance that vehicle, that driver would need to be able to safely see a car pulling out in the road ahead of them, see it, react, and slow down in advance of that car pulling out. The stopping site distance is the minimum distance that is required, that we are required by DOT in order to have a safe driveway operation. So that site distance was measured to be about 500 feet. It's ultimately limited by the crest of there's a crest in the road there, as you're aware of. So just as you're approaching that crest, you get the site distance and you have 500 feet. The minimum requirement for the DOT based on the northbound speeds on the road is 338 feet. So we're well in excess of the stopping site distance requirement. You can move to the next slide. I also measured the intersection site distance. So the intersection site distance is the site distance for a vehicle that would be coming out of the driveway and looking left southbound towards the Fieldstone signal. That intersection site distance was also measured to be about 500 feet, as it's dependent on that crest in the road. The intersection site distance requirement's a little bit higher. That's 478. So we're also in excess of the minimum requirement there based on DOT standards. The picture that was provided in the peer review memo was taken around to greater than 15 feet back of the edge of travelway basically in a bush. All that vegetation is going to be cleared as part of the site construction. There's a utility pole there as well, but vehicles are able to safely pull forward, and they can see beyond that if they move forward to roughly 10 to 12 feet behind the travelway. They can clearly see beyond that crest south towards the traffic signal at Fieldstone. The shoulder there is very wide. It's 8 feet. There's ample buffer there for vehicles to be able to pull forward and look southbound. I believe we have a picture. If you move to the next slide, there we go. So the intersection site distance I was just explaining, looking left, looking south. You can see the traffic signal, the red lights there at Fieldstone. You see the bottom of those lights. At that point, you can't see the car. Between there and the crest, the car appears at the 500-foot mark. You see the shoulders very wide at that location. This is the stopping site distance I mentioned first. This is standing at 500 feet. This is the Viron Rondo driveway here. There's the crest in the road, and you can't see it, but my vehicle is parked right about there. I parked 50 feet beyond the location where the site driveway would be located, and you can clearly see well, you can't clearly, but if you look closer in that picture, the vehicle is readily visible there. So I did have a conversation this afternoon with John Adams, the peer reviewer, went through all of his comments, went through the site distance measurements, the methodology, and he did concur with everything that we did out there as far as sight lines. And he said he would be willing to vouch for the fact that he was satisfied with our response to that question, and that the site distance coming out of the site is sufficient to provide safe egress for vehicles. Lastly, I did want to mention again, I mentioned it last time, but this is, were this to get approved here at the town level, we have to submit to DOT for an encroachment permit. It is a state road, Route 10. So the DOT would have to thoroughly review traffic operations at the driveway, the sight lines, the video, the advanced video detection. They would all give that a thorough look as well. So just to summarize again, the conclusions of our traffic study, our traffic analysis, this residential development will have no significant impact to traffic operations on the adjacent road network, and traffic can be safely accommodated entering and exiting the site driveway. I'm going to, oh yes, actually I will do that. You would, before I turn it over to Tom Daly, we did late this afternoon, I did get we did contact the police department again, just to review some of the recent crash history, because as I mentioned, our supplemental memo that we submitted back in November, that was submitted on November 17th. So it would not have captured any additional crashes that occurred between November 17th and today, December 11th. So we did review that. We did, one second here. There was that pedestrian crash was identified. Actually, that one was on October 24th. So that crash involved a pedestrian walking southbound in the shoulder on Route 10. That was near the intersection with Fieldstone Court. The circumstances around that crash is that the pedestrian was struck by a mirror there. The pedestrian did incur an injury, but pedestrian was, according to the police, the pedestrian was wearing dark pants, a dark jacket, listening to music while walking down the roadway. The pedestrian was actually ticketed and found to be at fault for reckless use of a highway by a pedestrian. So again, that is not something that I would be looking at as being a safety issue with the roadway. In December, beginning in December 1st through today, December 11th, we contacted the police department. They indicated there were 3 crashes in the first 11 days in the vicinity of the study area. And those crashes, so one of them had occurred with a vehicle turning right out of the Vera and Rondo driveway. One occurred about 100 feet south of the Highland Avenue at Schoolhouse Road intersection, which is well outside of our study area. And the other occurred, actually, it wasn't on Route 10, it was on East Johnson Road, so about 1/10 of a mile east of Highland Avenue. That was a rear-end collision between 2 trucks. As I mentioned, there's plenty of rear-end collisions at that intersection. It's a common crash at a signalized intersection. So again, in summary, we've analyzed the crash data very significantly here in the last 5 years. We've looked at the Yukon data, we've looked at the police data, we've looked at crash data right up through today. And these recent crashes reported are all consistent with past crash history along the corridor. There has been no evidence whatsoever of an increase in crashes recently in the last a couple of years here. And again, your peer reviewer, Barton and LoJudas, agreed with our crash analysis. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Tom Daly.
We have a few questions.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
So a couple of things. Under the crash data, the Barton comments here,
Mhm.
it says should consider addition of advanced vehicle detection on both Route 10 roadway approaches. And you mentioned, I think, that the DOT was already planning on doing that or something to that effect. This could provide dilemma zone protection. What is dilemma zone protection exactly?
Yeah, so dilemma zone, if you're, think about if you're driving down a road, you're going, say, 40 miles per hour, and you see the traffic signal turn yellow, and you're right in that spot where you don't know whether to slam on the brakes or slam on the accelerator and try to get through it. That's the dilemma zone. So that comes into play on roads such as Route 10, where you have speeds, prevailing speeds in excess of 40 miles per hour. So
55, 60 miles an hour. Yeah.
well, the 85th speeds were recorded in the 40s, but that's the design speed the DOT goes by, is the 85th percentile. But,
So would this detection, it would calculate an approaching vehicle speed and decide whether to stay yellow longer? Would it detect weather if it's snowing or raining and say, hey, stopping distance is longer, we should keep the light yellow longer? Is that what the whole concept is?
Basically what it does is that there's a detector in the mast arm, and it points a video detection zone in the roadway.
Yep.
That's basically the length of that dilemma zone. And if there is a vehicle inside that zone, it will extend the green time, so the vehicle doesn't have to decide. And once the vehicle passes it, then it will go.
So let me play devil's advocate. So if you're sitting at the Dunkin' Donuts driveway or was it Fieldstone Court right there, or Commerce? Yeah. If you're trying to get out, but keep jumping into the dilemma zone, it would take a green and you'd be sitting there longer, or something to that effect.
It could extend the red time on the side street
Okay.
by a small amount.
Okay. And my other question, you've done a lot of things for traffic, which is great. What about for pedestrian walkway from the project?
Yeah. So as we talked about
Is that further in the presentation, or?
No. So what we've done for I think what we had brought up, you had brought up last time, was primarily the concern with the school bus traffic, students trying to get on and off the bus.
I see the pull out, and that's a pull off for the bus, and that's great. But what about people walking to and from the apartment complex, either going to the plaza, going to work, or going south to Dunkin' Donuts or maybe an employer on Fieldstone, something to that
Yeah,
effect.
I mean, there's currently no pedestrian walking facilities on Route 10, further south or further north. So we could provide a sidewalk along the frontage, but it essentially would end up being that sidewalk to nowhere.
Well, yeah,
It's
I
not
mean,
it's not a corridor that has pedestrian facilities already in place.
well, that's,
We talked about the potential of extending a sidewalk up to West Johnson intersection. There is a sidewalk from there that goes then north across the bridge towards the Stonebridge development. That is something that could be entertained, but
well,
being south.
part of Mr. Tripp had the presentation here, and he mentions two large employers and of course the Stonebridge crossing. He said it's a great location because of those, and he's probably right. But you know, not everybody drives, especially if you're low income or in a certain percentile. So I mean, inherently people walk. I mean, there was a pedestrian there. I'm guessing he was walking to Bizzuto's because I see him all the time. There's people walking up and down Route 10 as it is, and there's no sidewalks. Stonebridge Crossing put in a big, beautiful sidewalk, I think, on both sides of the street. And ironically, the bridge, I drive by there every day, so I get to stare at it all the time. And then, you know, the sidewalk goes across the commuter lot, goes across it can't go across the bridge because they just put a new turning lane in. Of course, there would have to be a crosswalk in front of an exit ramp. And then, to your point, it just stops at before Dietrich's Gardens there. It's just not a walkable area, but people are still going to try. You know, and although you may put a sidewalk in that leads to nowhere, it's a start. My biggest concern, you did a great job addressing traffic. I just don't think
So we would be
done with pedestrian.
we would be prepared to, as Mark said, there's no place to go beyond it at this point. But as all sidewalks and walkability are concerned, there's got to be the first domino, and you know everyone has to kind of chip into it a little bit. So we would propose that we extend a sidewalk from our site drive north to that intersection of Johnson and East Johnson, where there is now recently the state installed as a part of their signal improvements a crosswalk across Route 10.
So yeah, I saw that. So there's a crosswalk going across Route 10 to West Johnson, but there's no crosswalk going across to the bridge and heading towards Stonebridge. And there's very few crosswalks. There's no crosswalk in front of Dunkin' Donuts. There's no, it's just very not a walkable place. Hence why it's an industrial zone. And it's just that's a big concern of mine. You talk about safety, that's everything. But thank you for extending the sidewalks as much as you can.
How tall are you?
6'3".
6'3"? And you were taking these pictures standing up?
We take them from the point of the perspective of the driver, 3.5 feet to 3.5 feet. So we measure with a cone that has basically has a little pipe in it
You've
at the
answered the
3.5
From
foot
the
mark.
perspective of the driver.
Yep.
Because you said you took those pictures. I wanted to clarify that you weren't taking them at 6'3". What is the height of the light that we're seeing that is red?
That's about 17 feet, but that's at the Fieldstone, so that's beyond the sight line. Yep.
So what would the distance be looking south? Because that's at least my concern. Looking south, you have your first telephone pole. What is the distance to the second telephone pole?
I'd have to look at that in the plan.
Well,
I can't answer that off what I measured was beyond the second pole, beyond the crest to 500 feet when the top of the cone no longer becomes visible.
Okay, but that light is at 17 feet.
That light's well beyond the sight line.
I understand, but it's still,
Mhm.
My point is there is a 17. So if that's the height, there's a 15-foot dip in the road from the entrance to Byron Rondo's to that light. I'd really like to know what the distance is to that first pole, because that's where it starts to go down. And that is my concern. Where it goes down. So those people that are coming through at 45 miles an hour and are coming over that hill, not expecting there to be a stop school bus, not expecting there to be walkers, not expecting there to be someone trying to exit left or right, what would the stopping distance be from that pole to your entrance? That would be my concern. I guess that's my traffic.
Well, I mean, you know, as I said, the minimum requirements of the state are what they are. There's 338 for stopping site and 478 for intersection site distance, and we're at 500. There's no subjectivity there. You know, those are the minimum requirements, and that's what we have to meet, and we're in excess of those.
No, I understand. So the minimum requirements on the other side of that slope. Looking south from the entrance, your minimum requirement, is that at the top of the hill or down at the slope?
It's
Down.
just beyond the crest as you're looking south. So there's the crest. You can see it. You can see it better looking in this direction. There's the crest. This is 500 feet. You're just past the Vera and Rondo Drive. That's where your 500 feet. Fieldstone still, where I'm standing here, Fieldstone's still a good distance behind you. You know, you got a picture here, 500 feet in, you know, both directions. So that's what I'm trying to relay on
I'm
this
trying to
photo.
say, where is that? Where is your 500-foot mark? How far down from the crest of the hill is the 500-foot mark? That's all I'm.
Okay, yeah.
That's all I'm asking.
I'd have to give you that measurement or go back out and give you the exact distance, but
I don't think there's a problem turning right at all.
Yep.
But I do feel there's a problem turning left unless someone coming out making a right is pulling out very slowly.
right. And we are proposing to eliminate that left out,
So there's going to be no left turn whatsoever.
out, in
Out.
there,
No,
in there
of
would be a
course there
left.
is. I
Yeah,
understand that.
Yeah.
But there'll be no left turn going out at all.
correct.
I have a question, follows up on that with that left-hand turn, and this is for staff as much as it is for the applicant. So with third-party review, it says it will be critical that the raised island be designed to maximize the restriction of left-hand movements out. When we approved the Hartford Healthcare Building, we wanted it higher. We wanted it more restrictive than it is. State came in because it's in the right of way and said, well, it doesn't need to be that big. So the applicant, of course, said, well, okay, we're not going to make it that big. I was driving down there today, and I drive down there every day. This morning, car took a left-hand turn out of there because the state said, well, you didn't have to build it that big. Do we have anything that we can put in there that
No.
would override the state coming in and saying,
No.
you can't, you either don't need it that big or you don't need it at all?
In my experience, the state is pretty adamant on the making it physically restrictive, because if you can't make it physically restrictive, people can do exactly what you're saying.
Well,
So
but
what-
the one, I'll argue with that because the one down here, the state came in and they said it didn't need to be as big as we wanted it to be. And so people can take a left-hand
It
turn.
might have maybe more truck traffic coming in and out of that one. Maybe they needed it to be a little wider for truck turns, or I'm just
Nope.
surmising, I'm not sure.
So if the state came in and said, well, you don't really need to restrict that left, what would you do? Can you commit that you would still have that?
If it's a town condition of approval, the state has to go by it. Absolutely.
I'm looking for guidance from our council too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a public safety issue, so I think there's a good basis to make it a condition of approval and have it be binding as such.
And sidewalk. So, Mr. Selmont was asking about the sidewalk. So I'm not clear where we stand on that. Are you proposing that you're going to build sidewalks all the way down to East West Johnson or not?
Yes. The applicant will agree to do that.
I'll let Casey go first. No, go ahead. Go ahead. Yep.
Well, this is south of the driveway, so the sidewalk would actually be, for here towards the signal at West Johnson. It would go to the north towards this. hmm Well, I'm standing here roughly where the driveway would be. So if you can imagine looking the other way towards Johnson, the sidewalk would go north towards West Johnson. Right. Yeah, I mean there is. That's right. We are proposing the bus. We're proposing a sidewalk down the driveway, like a landing area near the bus stop, and then so it's shown right here. And here is the sidewalk, and here is a sidewalk, and here's the bus pull off, and then the new sidewalk would go north towards Johnson, West Johnson. We would basically just extend it.
Okay. I just have a couple questions about the traffic study, Mr. Bertucci. In the data, it says vehicles were with cars and trailers, 12,511, 73%. What does that mean, cars and trailers? I don't understand. Does that mean like when you're doing this traffic data, is it like a piece going across and that as the tires go, that's how you measure what vehicles are going over it?
Well, we're basically what we look at. We don't like dissect the vehicle classification into like 25 different ways like it's in this data. We usually, what the DOT would look at would be passenger cars and heavy vehicles, meaning like something larger than a box truck, like a tractor trailer, say. That's that 4%, the heavy vehicles. That's what gets input into the analysis. Those are the
So in
vehicles
this data, the total percentage of trucks is approximately 27%. That's what this data shows?
I think if you're saying 27, that's probably including like pickup trucks, box trucks, trailers. Things
I
like
would
that.
say a car with a trailer. I don't see cars go down the road with trailers on them. I'm on the road every day there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that the number I would focus on there in that data is in the DOT count data that we got. The percentage of heavy vehicles is 4%. That's really the critical number. The heavy vehicles.
I don't agree with that.
The trucks, the tractor trailers are what kind of, they react. They start slower. They decelerate slower. So when we analyze intersections, those heavy vehicles react differently. So, if you had an intersection where you had 10 tractor trailers on it versus 10 cars, it's going to take a lot longer for the tractor trailers to get through the intersection, and it might not operate as well.
Well,
so
the kind of traffic you have there, going to Whole Foods, going to Bizzuto's, going to the farms, whatever, is that you have people doing deliveries from out of state, and they have confusion when they're driving, and they get lost, and they're coming up that right before where this intersection is, where it veers in from 1 lane to 2 lane. And they're, I understand that like you're driving a big truck and you don't know where you are and you're unsure of where you are. And then they start making a little bit of evasive moves, So that's where accidents do happen. That's what I'm saying. And I've said that from the beginning. When you bring 2 lanes into 1, which is right near Viron. Now, the thing about Viron, structural, basically from the eye doctor all the way up to Schoolhouse Road, every one of those properties has access to Reinhardt Road. Every one of them has back access. So if a car accident happens in front of Viron, everybody could get out the back. Okay? If a car accident happens in front of the DMV department right there where they do the testing, they could go out the back. Right down the row, everybody could leave out the back on Reinhardt Road. The accessibility of this project is huge to me because it's not safe to come in and out of that driveway. And it's a danger to the area because you don't have a back access. If this project came out on Fieldstone Court or East Johnson Avenue or even Burton Drive, had it in only, and not an out, I'd be all about it. That's what really, to me, deters the project, is access. The access that this has is incident. The incident will be an accident. And I mean, and I know through I've been doing access for 40 years, and I've been on the commission for 20. And we've just passed the biggest thing right down the street, 100 acres. I mean, we developed that, everything like that. That's going to be huge. We haven't even figured what the traffic's going to come from that either. So now you're putting more traffic with confusion, and now you put that driveway right there. The traffic comes in, somebody's pulling out, they got nowhere to go. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm stressing. And as far as pedestrians going down the road, it scares me. You know, it really does. I mean, I see people walk at night. I live there. I live down the road and in my house next to my shop. And I see people walk down the road at night. So, I mean, I see it and I know the traffic, and I know that it's 25% truck traffic. I live there. It's not 2%. It's 25%. Trucks go by all night, all day, 24 hours. So I'm there. I mean, I see it. I see what's going on, but I'm very, very concerned about taking one way in, and it just scares me. You know, I think it should be one way and then out another road with a traffic light. That's safe. That's all I want that on the record, because I really think something's going to happen bad. Thank you.
I will say on the driveway, we are designing it with a median. So there'd be a right out and an entrance. So I know you mentioned there's only one way in or out, but if there were a crash for the right out, you still have that egress lane there. It's kind of, two drives separated. There's also a secondary emergency egress as well. Northern property boundary. So, yeah. So if the entrance was totally blocked, they could go out that way. And just to clarify one thing you said, that the Stone Bridge, we did account for the traffic, as I mentioned at the last meeting. We did account for that traffic in the background, so that is all in there. And as far as safety, I guess we can agree to disagree on the safety of the driveway. And we think that left turn restriction is going to make it much safer than it was as originally proposed. And again, the peer review, the town has hired a peer reviewer to look at this, and he concurred that left turn out restriction was a good idea and would provide safe operations. All set? Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Tom Daly, and he's going to go over some of the site plan modifications that have been made.
Thank you, Mark. For the record, Tom Daly with SLR Consulting. I'm a professional engineer. Go through just some small minor modifications to the plan. I think you've heard a few of those already this evening, but as Ben and Mark have indicated, Mark and his office had a conversation with the Board of Education Transportation Coordinator, and they made a recommendation that on the south side of our driveway, to see if we could get a pull-off. He actually gave us an example of another location in Cheshire that's been successful. This is not intended to be a full bus pull-off. It still will be a full stop when the stop sign comes up on the bus. But what it does is it just gets it out of the lane of traffic a little bit. And also it allows a greater buffer so that the students are not waiting at the curb line. They're actually back off the curb line. So the bus will be there. We also extended sidewalks we already had a sidewalk extending all the way to Highland Ave on the north. We now extend a sidewalk on the south side too. So any school kids will be able to wait basically back from the curb line on Highland Ave. The bus can pull in, get them on, and go off. That was a recommendation, and we were able to accommodate that. In addition to that, we did add a mail kiosk. So there's a centrally located mail kiosk located here. We have a nice bank of parking directly adjacent to it that is not directly adjacent to some of the buildings. So it's usually that we expect that to be available most of the time, but that'll be a central mail kiosk. I think next slide. Okay, next slide. And then there was a discussion about when we designed the plan, the intent is there's a lot of basically new growth woods up there, but I'm sure this commission drives by it as much as I do. It does provide a decent buffer between there. Our current plan, we have that 100-foot easement that the buildings are set back. Our current plan was we were going to clear cut that and re-landscape all the area. But we have evaluated an alternate plan if the commission is so inclined. And as you can see, we would be able to retain basically 65-foot depth of existing vegetation on both the north and the south locations. You can see these two big blocks of vegetation. We would still supplement that area on the backside with some additional plantings, but we believe from a grading standpoint that existing vegetation can still retain if that's what the commission so desires. Or we can go with the alternate plan. But it's a relatively flat site in the beginning of the project, so basically that vegetation can be retained. Next slide. As both Ben and Mark have indicated, we are prepared to provide a alternate design to the proposed driveway. We would do basically a pork chop or a design the center. We already have that center island, so it's a fairly easy modification. And I think the commission has shown, has indicated other locations on Route 10 where the islands actually were pretty minute. They're pretty small. This one, we already had a central island, so we believe this to be more robust and will do a better job to push that traffic to be right-hand turn only. The fire department did ask for that island to have mountable curb, so we were already planning on that. So we think this modification can be much more robust than some of the other things you've seen on Route 10 because we have the central island, which is much more. So we have I think it's an 8-foot high wide island there. So there's already a good channelization there. Ben indicated, or Andrea indicated, a discussion of the hydrant. There was a hydrant test request from town staff. We contacted the Regional Water Authority and asked for a hydrant test. Unfortunately, they did it just to the south of us, but they did do it on Route 10 near Blacks Road, and the results came back as excellent. So we were able to get a hydrant test in that location, and they received. We had, and this test was just done mid-November, and that they had a available flow of almost 3,000 gallons. I'm sorry, that was a different. Sorry, they had. Well, they have that. So we have a hydrant test where the projected available flow is 2,000 gallons per minute, and we have very good pressure. So we have a static pressure of 78 and a residual pressure of 51. And as you know, this site falls away, so the pressure will actually increase as we get to the back. To give you a context of that, we have Metro Realty has built the same exact building on Steel Road in West Hartford. A fire protection engineer evaluated what the pressure was required for the fire protection for that three-story building, and they determined they need 60 psi, which was what we have at the front, and only 64 gallons per minute to fire up the fire protection system. Really, the greatest demand on a project like this is more the hydrant flow. And when we gave our original letter to the Regional Water Authority at WillServe, we put in the WillServe request that we needed 1,000 gallons per minute out of our hydrant. And in fact, they came back and confirmed that they can serve the project for both domestic and fire demand requirements. And at this point, I don't think we have no outstanding engineering comments or any comments from the fire marshal in regards to the plan as designed. With that, we've already been to WPCA. They've shown capacity. We've provide drainage calculations. We have no outstanding comments on the drainage. So it's my professional opinion that we've kind of checked all the boxes in terms of utilities on this particular project. Thank you.
There's a question on the site. Mr. Bowman had brought it up at the last meeting. So this is something new for Cheshire with the assisted housing. And he had indicated he'd like to see more ADA or handicap parking because you have, now we're going to go up to 18 assisted units.
But My experience is those are those units, those residents are typically not driving their own cars. They're having van services. So we actually, in front of the rear building, we made sure we got handicap parking right in the front of it, and we have dedicated parking in there. If the commission is so inclined, we can actually have in addition to that, a dedicated van space for Southington and Park, so they can just kind of come in, pick those people up and head out.
So I think part of the question on that was at the last meeting, the assisted units were not going to be located just in that back building. They were going to be spread out through. So are you going to have handicap accessible parking near each of those buildings?
We have handicapped spread out. And if you know, the new building code actually has a more robust parking. Before, you would just simply, whether it's commercial, retail, you would just take the overall parking and you divide it by a ratio and it would give it. The new building code changes that. For residential, they say you take that, but then you need to provide an additional 2%. So this plan meets the new building code that just came out I believe in October. So we actually have more handicap parking spaces than what you've traditionally seen in the past on multifamily projects.
Are all the units sprinklered, and are they wet or dry if they are?
They're from Metro, they're wet sprinklered.
And then mounting for the fire department, if you did the south curb and the north curb mountable and maybe half of the center island, but 10, 15 feet that are out on Route 10 should not be mountable at all, so that they can't make that left-hand turn, because
Well-
that center island is what's going to stop that. For a fire truck to come in, there's nothing on the north end, so they're coming from the south. If they have to mount, they can mount around that corner on that curb, and they can go through that center island.
And I would say it's mountable for a fire truck, but not mountable for a car.
I would make it dangerous for a car.
Well, we'll have to work with the fire department on, we have to strike
I
that
mean,
balance.
who is it, our call or the fire department's call? Who has the last call on that?
So.
And will they work with us on that?
Excuse me. I think the language actually from the fire chief is like the boilerplate language you always see, the mountable curbs, and it'll be approved by his designee. So Jack usually gets with the applicant. We acknowledge that whatever the entrance is going to have or wherever within the development, mountable curbs will be located, and they kind of iron it out in the field. So, and to the extent that it satisfies his request, because it's really his apparatus getting in and out. Does that answer your question?
Maybe he
Doug?
should come here and talk to us next hearing on this.
What's the date of the plan up there?
This alternate plan, the date of the plan is December 8th.
December 8th. So the fire marshal has not reviewed this plan.
No, this was in response to the staff, the peer review that just came in end of last week.
Okay, so we still need to have the fire marshal review this. Could you forward the concerns of Mr. Mercado as to the mountable curb? Especially the mountable curb on the north, on the right turn curb only. If that is not mountable, the fire department should not, going out, really require a mountable curb, because fire's done, they're on their way home.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be required. So, I'd like to see if the fire marshal would work with us in not making that. Once that's a mountable curb, and once that island is whatever it happened to be, stone or whatever you're going to do in there, somebody, sure and God made little green apples, is going to mount that curb and turn left and head south, whether you've got that configuration or not. So if it's not mountable, we've got a better chance of them not going south and going north.
We'd be more than happy to work with the fire department. They indicated they wanted that island mountable, and then the one way in the back of the site, that kind of where the main building in the back mountable. But I'll be honest, it was a general comment. We didn't get into specific on details, and be more than happy to find that, strike that balance between the two, to find, restrictive movements, at the same point getting the fire truck in and out of there safely.
Well, he's really only making recommendations. Believe it or not, we have the final say as to what happens. We just happen to rubber stamp what he wants, but we could certainly have our final say on that.
We've designed islands 20 different ways, depending on what the community needs is. So we've done where we just did the first part more like brick pavers if they had to get in there, and then they pull them back. But we'll work with the town easily on that.
Thank you.
Just also, there's an emergency access road. What is that going to be?
Grass pavers.
Yeah, grass. It's the pavers that allow grass to grow
Yes.
up, but still maintains a stable. So
Yeah. So
if
like
he's got
West
that
Farms
emergency
Mall,
access too, he should be less concerned about mountable curbs on the actual entrance too.
possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but though, yeah, that will be clearly an emergency access. There'll be the grids on there, so it'll look like grass most of this year. Yep. We also have back on the last building on one of the sides. We also have an emergency access on the side of the road. It'll be the same exact detail there.
Going back to the parking on the, there's a chart on the bottom of slide 12, and it looks like the requirement is 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit. However, what's being provided is 1.75, leaving it, sorry for the words, a little short. Can you help
Yeah, and
reconcile the
that's-
difference?
That is that's been modified in the last submission. So the requirement in this regulation is 1.75, and we're providing 1.75. That being said, we didn't take any credit for the supportive housing. So we didn't, even though those are maybe residents that won't have as many cars or that they'll be using a van service, we didn't discount that. So we feel actually in the context of that, we're well parked on this project. And as you know, with Route 10, we basically have to have, and even frankly, there's still room on this site. If there was a ever later date that we need to get new parking, we could ever come back. There's enough breathing room on this site to accommodate that. But Metro has such a large portfolio of these projects. They traditionally say 1.5 is kind of their sweet spot. So 1.7, we still think we're more than accommodating for the need there.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. With that, thank you.
Hi, my name is Tricia Gibney. I'm the Chief Executive Officer at the Arc of Southington, and I'd like to thank you for listening to my testimony today. There was a safety concern brought up by the committee at the last public hearing that I'd like to address. You expressed a concern about the location of this project. All of our individuals have staff.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you a second. Are you testifying as part of the public or part of the applicant? With the applicant? Okay. Okay, just want to check.
Could you speak in?
Yeah, okay. There was a safety concern brought up by the committee last public hearing I would like to address. You expressed a concern about the location of the project. All our individuals have staff all of our individuals have staff that transports them to and from work and to community activities. Some of our individuals currently live on a busy street in Southington, and this has not been a problem. I am sure that your concerns come from the right place, but I assure you that no one cares more for the individual safety and well-being than the families and those of us who spend our lives providing support to them. Where this development is going to be is not a safety concern of ours. This location is centrally located from our office in Plantsville and near the apartments that our individuals and intellectual disabilities currently live. Moving only a few miles from their current living situation will allow them to be connected not only to the Southington community, but the Cheshire community as well. The location is at the very north end of Cheshire on a main road with easy access to Route 10 into 691. This is ideal as we provide transportation for our individuals we support. This location also makes it possible for families to get to their loved ones without traveling too far. The other positive point about this location is that it will be near downtown, the street with a large development that is coming north of 691, which will bring shopping and dining very close to the development, but more importantly, also jobs and employment. Please look around with all the parents that are here to support this project. They want their loved ones to live in a community that they grew up in and know is so well. It's very important to our individuals with intellectual disabilities to live in a community that is safe and close to their families. if we lose the ability to move forward with this development, it may never exist. So we are asking you to, when you're making your decision on this proposal, please think of us. Thank you.
In this letter from DDS,
Mhm.
it says DDS agrees to find services only for individuals referred by DDS. So are all your tenants or clients referred by DDS? Are you part of DDS or
Yes.
involved with them?
Yes. And most individuals with intellectual disabilities, even if they're not in a group home or so forth, have a case manager identified from the department.
And then looking on your website, it said that DDS has 2 places in Cheshire already. How many units are those?
We have 2 group homes in Cheshire currently.
And the ARC takes care of that. You're the
Yes.
service provider for those. How many units are those?
There are
2?
2 homes with 3 individuals in each.
6? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, again, Andre Gomes, counsel for the applicant. I think at this point, Mr. Chairman, if it works for you and the rest of the commission, I'll hold on to my final comments, if I may, and perhaps hand it over to public comment. We do have a lot of people here to speak, and I know the last hearing went on for quite a bit. Before I do that, though, I do want to just remind the commission, and the commission has heard me say this before, that the applicant, and there's ample case law on this, the applicant is entitled to a legal presumption that its residents will comply with laws, and that includes traffic laws and obeying any laws applying to pedestrians as well. So we do have a legal presumption there. I just wanted to address that because there's a lot of discussion about complying with the left turn restriction and things like that. So with that in mind, Mr. Chairman, I'll hand it over to public comment.
Yeah, I've actually just one quick question again.
Sure.
So we talked about raising it to 18 assisted units, correct?
18 supported
Supported
units, I
units.
believe was the, yes, assisted
Supported.
housing is the entire development, supported.
Supported units. And by increasing that from 15 to 18, we're not talking about also increasing the number of market. We're going to stay at 13 for the market.
The affordability is separate from the supportive housing. So we're going to stay at the same number of affordable units, which again is going to be the 80% affordable, 20% market. And I'll look at Metro for that.
So we're going to stay at 13.
Correct.
Thank you.
Of course.
Anybody have anything else before we go to the public? Okay.
Thank you.
If anybody has a question from the public, please come up, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Donna Baudelaire, 138 Sloper Lane. This is my son, Brent. I'm here in support of the proposed supportive housing development by Southington ARC, DDS, and Metro Realty. As Brent's mom, I must impress on you to please think about Brent as a representative of a population in need of a community solution for Brent and others in his situation. Brent should be afforded the same opportunities as non-developmentally challenged individuals as your own. He and his peers have dreams and aspirations of independence just as your children do. We as a community are tasked with fostering independence and self-reliance in our children. Special needs adults can accomplish this. They just need a little extra help and support. For the last 28 years, my late husband, John, and I have been preparing Brent for an independent living solution that this hearing would present. Brent and I are not alone in recognizing the need for this in our community. As a community, we are responsible to provide this kind of support and housing for our population. While raising Brent, I was under the impression that assisted housing would be commonplace not only in Berlin, Canton, Glastonbury, but in Cheshire as well. Cheshire needs this now. We can be leaders in this area. I can only assume that you don't have a special needs child. Consider yourselves very lucky as parents who do not have a child with special needs. We as parents of special needs adults have to work harder to provide the same things that are available to other adults in our community. Everything we do is a challenge. The time has come that we embrace this project now, not just for Brent, but for the many other special needs adults in our community. They are responsible, productive members of the Cheshire community who should be afforded equal access and opportunities to be independent. So again, look at Brent. Please don't crush his dreams. Please afford him and others the ability to live in this community he calls home. If I have to move Brent to another town, he would surely fail. Why? One word: consistency. Because he will know no one, have no nearby support from his family and friends. By staying in Cheshire, he will be able to have professional support along with support from his brothers, one who is here, one that had to leave, his aunts, his uncle who had to leave unfortunately, and friends who provide moral support. On his own, but close to home. I will conclude by saying that Brent is very, very excited about his future in this project. I thank you for your time.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Anthony Massarelli. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the Arc of Southington. And I'm not one for public speaking, so please be patient with me. I was present at the last planning and zoning meeting regarding this development, and it was difficult to sit in the gallery when I know how much other such projects really benefited the people that we serve. And based on your comments, it seemed like the project was moving towards a non-approval. I attended a Zoom meeting several months ago that had a video presentation of another such project that had recently been completed. I think it was in Canton. It featured a couple with developmental disabilities that wanted to get married, but were not sure how that would look like for them. They moved into this brand new development, and after they proved them to themselves that it was something they could do, they did marry. And they were so proud. They gave the tour of the building and with all its security and technology features, and then they gave a brief description of what a normal day looked like for them. They made breakfast, got ready for work, caught a bus that picked them up at the complex, and when the workday was done, they came home, made dinner, and watched television, and lived their lives, much like you and me. It brought tears to my eyes, and it convinced me that this could be the future for many of our individuals, and it was beautiful. The bottom line is each member of this board took the position of being good stewards, looking out for the citizens of the town of Cheshire. That includes all the citizens of the town, some of which need our assistance. Now I want you to think of your siblings, your children, and possibly your grandchildren, who grew up in Cheshire and now have entered the workforce. Can you see it? Now picture them coming to you saying, I'm moving to Waterbury, New Britain, or Meriden, because there is no place for them to live that they could afford in Cheshire. I felt that way when I was in my 20s, wanting to buy my first home in Southington, where I grew up. In fact, my sister just said the same thing to me about her children, who are now in their early 30s, who can't afford to live in our town either. She worries about her daughter and son-in-law that live in a rougher section of Bristol because it's all they can afford. They're trying to save for a down payment on their first home and felt this was the only way they could do so. Sometimes doing the right thing means not doing what is popular. Affordable housing projects are not the same thing as Section 8 housing projects. They simply offer its working class citizens and the people like those that the Arc of Southington serve a place in the hometown that they wish to live in. And I thank you for your time.
Anyone else from the public?
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Bill Costello. I live at 5 Urbina Court in Cheshire. As I said last time, I lived here my whole life, raised my 3 daughters. My oldest daughter, Andrea, works at Reread Books, and recently in the last year got a job at CVS in Meriden, hopefully to get a job down the street here in Cheshire, and getting paid too. And this past Saturday, I think it was this past Saturday or Thanksgiving weekend, she went for the first time to CVS in Meriden without her job coach. That sounds like a big deal to a lot of people, but it was like, you know, I had tears in my eyes that morning when she got back. She was able to go there without a job coach, and she has moved the needle totally. So I appreciate the work you guys do and the review of this matter, which I know is important. As you consider this proposal, I ask that you also think about and weigh the responsibility. I'm sure most of you are parents, and how that parenting of children at any age and how stressful that can be for parents emotionally, physically, and certainly financially, even when your child is healthy. I also want you to know what the top worries of Donna and all the other parents here tonight, and quite a few who couldn't come tonight because they can't leave their child at home. And another statistic I found today, that 80% of parents of raising a child with a disability are divorced. And that's a sad statistic that I hate to talk about, but it's a fact. The top worries that we have as special needs parents have as you consider this application is we think about our child's safety just like you think about the town's safety. We worry about their safety not just while they're in school, going to the bus stop, but we worry about their safety well beyond school, 24/7 for life. It doesn't stop. It continues forever. We wouldn't be here tonight if we didn't think this development and this proposal and this site was a safe. And I just want to reiterate again that the ARC went to Metro Realty to retain them, but it was really Cheshire parents who came to the ARC and asked them to and propose this development for Cheshire. I just want to be clear on that. Parents from the special needs community think about and look for avenues for our children to learn and progress. I just shared you my story with my daughter. This development with the ARC support is going to do that. It's a wonderful initiative that the state of Connecticut has pushed over the last several years. We worry about our child's self-esteem. We worry about our children being labeled. This integration, this idea, it goes right from the high school into our community, and it's something that every resident in the town of Cheshire, if it was put to a vote, would be 100% for it. I can guarantee you that. We worry about our other children's needs. Are they going to be left to care for these children? No, the ARC is going to help us prepare a life for our children, for our other kids can live their life to their fullest. And more than anything, we constantly wonder what will happen and who will care for our kid, our child when we die. I mean, that's a constant thing that Donna talked about, we all think about, and it doesn't stop. But why does all this matter? For people with disabilities, there are far too many barriers to housing. Without affordable, accessible housing in our community, many are at risk of institutionalization or even homelessness. Being part of a community, living as independently as possible, are among the most important values and goals shared by people with disabilities and their families. A home of one's own is a cornerstone of independence for people with disabilities, as Brent has attested to the last time he spoke. As a reminder, I would like to bring back to your affordable housing plan adopted by the Cheshire Planning and Zoning Commission. I think Ben stole my thunder, but I think it bears repeating because I want the community to hear it and I want it for the record. Your plan that you all adopted says the creation of additional affordable housing units in Cheshire will benefit the community. I think without a doubt, this development is going to benefit the community in several ways. More affordable housing units diversifies the housing stock in Cheshire. It creates options for citizens who choose to live in town, whether it's first homeowners, renters, seniors wishing to age in place, or individuals that would otherwise not have the economic means to consider living in this community. And then you finish by saying the Planning and Zoning Commission is fully committed to assuring the goals and objectives concerning housing outlined in this plan are met. Over the last years, this commission, I'm not sure of the makeup of it, but 619 apartments have been approved by the commission to be built in Cheshire or so. Only approximately 50 of those are affordable and funded. I ask tonight that you approve this safe, wonderful, and well thought out addition to the Cheshire community. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening again. I'm Liam Constantine from 91 Vista Terrace. And last time we were here, I spoke about my son, Tim, and his desire for community, his wonderful experience at Cheshire High School with one of the best special ed departments in the state, a Best Buddies chapter that is a model nationwide. But I also want to tell you too, 2 weekends ago, Reread Books had their holiday festival. You could barely move walking around the Watch Factory because of the support in the community for our special needs. Great, yes, indeed. But I also, so I do think the support for the special needs community is very strong here, and support for this initiative reflects the kind of enthusiasm. I do want to emphasize again what Bill started to say towards the end of his time. We have, I'm one of them actually. We have parents of children. We're left with a dilemma right now. Where does our child go? For some of us, our child is not best served in a group home. Our child is not best served in other housing. This opportunity might just be the magical step or place for our children. We're left with that dilemma. Do we keep our child at home? Do we hope that our child's siblings will support our child when we're gone? And that's quite a burden put on a sibling to do that. So we're left with that dilemma. Many people will keep their special needs adult at home until they pass away, and that adult then doesn't have the experience of independence, and there's no idea where the child will go, or that adult, actually, I say child, but adult will go after that. So this is a wonderful step, and there is a community out here that will be served very well by this. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Critter.
Yeah, I have a question for ARC. I have a question. You said there's currently 6 lots in Cheshire. There's 6 beds in Cheshire for group homes. Now, are there any other providers in Cheshire, or are you the only one?
I can't answer that. There may be other agencies that provide services for people with intellectual disabilities in group homes in Cheshire. I don't know that, but we have 2.
I mean, because it appears to me that 6 beds for a town this size would be disproportionately very, very small, very low.
So, when years ago, group homes were 5, 6 people in a group home, and people didn't have the choice of who they wanted to live with, and they still don't have the choice to who they want to live with when they move into a group home. But normalcy, we look at the fact that when your kids move out of the house, you're not going to be moving with 5, 6 people. You're going to be moving with 1 or 2 roommates. And that's where the department has kind of gone to make group homes a little bit, a smaller family style of usually about 3 people. So we have 2 ranch style homes, just like you would live in, and there's 3 folks that live there. Yep.
Same, if you can say, please. There's other affordable locations in Cheshire. Say Hazel. We'll just use that example. Do you have the opportunity through DDS to go in there and say, hey, I want 4 units for some of these children or adults? Do you have to be tied to a particular development like this that's using?
So the department, this is a new initiative for the department. So we met Metro Realty and we're developing this whole supported housing with them. I don't think that there's an opportunity to do that in the other housing, because you're starting from ground up. So now we're making these apartments with assistive technology to keep people as independent as possible to live in their own home.
But last meeting I had asked, and you said that you can put that same technology in any home. So if you went to
Well,
Hazel and
some of it you can, absolutely, but not all of it. I mean, we're going to be putting things into the home that, obviously you want people to live in their home as long as they possibly can. So that's kind of our thought process with building from ground up. I'm not saying that you can't go and get an apartment anywhere and put an individual with special needs in that, but this is a situation where we're building from ground up. So we're going to have a meeting room, we're going to have an office so that we have 24-hour around the clock. I shouldn't say 24-hour, but a third shift there so that they can make sure the technology is working if somebody needs assistance in the middle of the night. Currently, our IHS programs don't have a third shift, and that makes it difficult for our folks if they need help in the middle of the night. We have a manager having to run in and go and support them in the middle of the night if something happens, where this will have an office setting, we'll have greeting and meeting rooms, and it's integrating people without disabilities with people with disabilities. So it's inclusion. So it's a really an amazing opportunity for our folks.
Thank you.
No, I just have a comment. I don't think there's a commissioner up here.
Do you have a comment for me?
No, just in
Okay.
general. No, thank you. I don't think there's a commissioner up here that is certainly opposed to this type of housing. To say that this site is challenging is, an understatement. Because of our knowledge of Cheshire and our knowledge of the area, we have to ask hard questions. We're not responsible, but we are responsible for asking the questions of access and egress, of sidewalks, of the things that are going to be provided for not just the assisted, but the entire project. I certainly would support this project anywhere else in Cheshire. And I think by the tough questions that were asked, at least by myself, a lot of them have been addressed. There's still a few that haven't been, and I think we're getting to that. If there was another access to this project, either through East Johnson Avenue or Fieldstone Court, this would be a no-brainer for anyone. You don't have that access. So we have to ask these questions. We have to ask about sidewalks. We have to ask about sight lines. These things, I went out myself with 100-foot tape to measure some of these things off because I am concerned for the safety of the residents. So again, I'm going to say I don't think there's one person here that doesn't think that the town of Cheshire needs this type of housing. I just think we're trying to assure ourselves and the community that this project will work safely. Thank you.
For the record, thank you, Commissioner. For the record, Andrea Gomes, counsel for the applicant. Commissioner, we expect the hard questions, and very frequently the hard questions and the comments that come from commissioners who are paying attention to the details is what results in a better application than where we started. Development is very much a team sport, so to speak. You have people looking at it, the experts from the traffic, from the stormwater, from the leasing perspective. Everyone comes together. There's a reason that these presentations are multidisciplinary and you have a lot of team members because we're all working within our own rooms of expertise, so to speak. So we anticipate and appreciate the hard questions. We don't fault the commission for that. I think where it comes down to, and then I'll flip a question back to the commission, is that we believe, at least I'm going through my notes from tonight's hearing, we believe we've addressed the commission's questions and concerns. We have addressed all and accepted all outstanding staff comments. We've incorporated them into the plans and or just accepted them verbally or in writing. And as far as traffic goes, we have, again, no concerns from the town engineer that we've seen in any of the comments. The peer reviewer has no concerns, and you have Mr. Vertucci accepting the peer reviewer's suggestions that were just suggested. So again, when you kind of look at this from a process of elimination standpoint, we appreciate the hard questions. We think we have a better plan because of it, and we think that we've drilled down and addressed everything that needs to be addressed. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll just ask, I'm going through my notes, trying to see if there's anything that needs additional follow-up. The one thing I heard from the commission was questions to perhaps the fire marshal regarding the mountable curb or non-mountable curb, as it may be. That is the only issue I see as potentially needing additional review. Again, Commissioner Bowman said that the commission ultimately makes that decision here. So we would be willing to entertain a condition of approval, for example. And again, I could craft the language with Mr. Glidden after the fact, but some type of condition of approval saying that the curb will not be mountable exiting the site, it shall only be mountable entering the site. Because as the commission suggested, you don't really need the mountable curb when everyone's going home. So that could be a potential avenue to put it in the commission's purview, but still leave a little bit of flexibility for the fire marshal.
No, I think that we should wait for the fire marshal. The plan, that's why I asked what the date was. The date of the plan was December 8th. That's 3 days ago. So you know what, like you say, we need to dot our i's and cross our t's.
Understood.
And I believe that outside of the public hearing that we can't take in evidence of the project. So I'd like to certainly be sure that all our questions are answered. And you had said that tomorrow the fire hydrant test is going to be performed.
Correct.
And the one thing I don't think that some of the commissioners, and I don't want to put any words in anyone's mouth, that they had questions on sidewalks and what you were going to provide. I know a lot of people have questions on going north on Route 10. Believe it or not, my concern is going south. And my concern is because no one's going to walk, or I shouldn't say that, but I think there'll be very few people walking walking north up to the Stonebridge Crossing. I think there's going to be more people walking south to Dunkin' Donuts. That would be my concern with the sidewalk, is really going south. And seeing what the state's appetite is for putting a crossing there to Dunkin' Donuts. And I guess we're giving them a lot of advertising right now, but that would be my concern. Thank you.
Just quick question. Why was this property chosen? I know why the location was chosen, and that makes sense. The close to our places to work. Why was this exact property chosen to build this? There's got to be 30 plus properties right in that area that are just vacant land at the moment.
Yep. So Commissioner, I'll ask Mr. Tripp to come up and answer that.
Thank you.
So there were a couple of reasons this specific property. One, when looking in, in this stretch, as you know, most of the properties are currently zoned industrial. This property and the property just to the north of it are both entirely in the aquifer protection area, which we felt from the standpoint of rezoning an industrial property to an alternative use, we chose one that had a significant limitations on the current alternate uses given the restrictions of the aquifer protection area. Also, as was alluded to last time, we can only do 20. We were recruited by the Arc of Southington. So the supportive housing drove this entire initiative. We're limited to 25% of our apartments. Our style of design is a less dense colonial style, village style. It's just less dense. So you need more acreage in order to really get to that critical mass, which we like to see at least 60, ideally 70 plus apartments, so that we can have again, critical mass of supportive housing units. To do that in a less dense style, sort of a style that's perhaps more consistent with what the town of Cheshire is used to, it required, call it nine developable acres.
So these this property, the one just north of it, has aquifer protection.
Correct.
So what is the benefit of that to a residential
So residential is a permitted use in the aquifer. A ton of industrial uses are not.
So in other words, the property's cheaper because
No, I wouldn't say it was.
commercially usable or less industrial.
I would, I say that because I would think the commission, obviously, there's a consideration to trying to preserve industrial land in town for its highest and best use. Those uses are limited here. Like you can't, there's a ton of traditionally industrial uses that cannot go here because of its limitation under the Aquifer Protection Act.
Okay. So
So it doesn't benefit me as a developer, but in evaluating sites that potentially might be easier for the commission to consider a rezoning.
the problem, and it's, I'm sure it's obvious at this point that this particular property is less than ideal. You guys are trying to do a town a favor by using this property that has aquifer protection and has less industrial opportunity, but we're sacrificing potentially the safety of the tenants and the residents and people around them.
So that's just, I guess, where we disagree. When we do our due diligence on any site, you know, we retain third-party experts who provide their opinion, their expert analysis on the safety. And if this site didn't have sightline or had some element that would, you know, geotechnical analysis, environmental analysis, anything that says we could not safely develop our proposal here, we would not have submitted a proposal.
Like Mr. Bowman said, I love the project. I love the idea. I love the supported housing and everything else. I have a tough time with this particular property and this particular location for it. And I'm trying to work it out in my mind, but I had to ask if there was any opportunity to put it somewhere else. And I realize people own property and it's not, you can't just point to the map and say, let's go there. But it's, you know, I was just trying to get the idea of the applicant, why they chose this particular one. But thank you.
I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second because I think that I saw, before we got interrupted, was there anybody else from the public that wanted to come up? I thought I saw somebody stand up. Don't want you to lose your opportunity to speak. Sorry.
Thank you. I'm Carol French. I live on 154 Winthrop Drive, and I just wanted to say I'm not a parent of a special needs child, but my daughter did go through the school system, and there's this swell of culture of inclusion and support for peers with intellectual disabilities, physical disabilities, and I'd like to see that continue to grow as a population. Like our kids are growing up seeing their peers equally, not seeing limitations with their peers, and I'd like that to continue to grow as they age. It certainly wasn't something in my generation, and I think, you know, for all the benefits that this development has, I think it's an excellent opportunity, you know, as our children grow into adults, and just to further that sense of normalcy for abled and disabled. I'm not using the right terms, but there's just such a strong support. I saw it with my own children, and I'd like to see it develop and spread throughout the community as our children grow up and become adults. And I think this is a great opportunity for that. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Okay. I have a couple questions. I'll make it quick. Looking at the zone text amendment, I see where you highlighted this section in red. We already talked about that, so we don't have to go through there. But one question for you on the last paragraph, which is 44C.10, why no special permit required? I think that kind of takes away our ability as a commission to have input on architecture and other things if that special permit's not there.
Correct, Commissioner. So special permits are contradictory to the standard that the commission is working under 830G. Special permits are inherently discretionary, right? The commission has the authority to impose conditions to mitigate impacts. On the 830G side, the standard of the review standard that the commission has is the burdens on the commission to show that it denied because of a substantial public health and safety issue. So it's almost like an apples and oranges type of analysis. So we just make abundantly clear whenever we do an 830G text amendment in any town. I know the commission has seen one of a prior application that I worked on as well. We always provide generally that there's no special permit required because it just doesn't work with the 830G standard.
Okay, and when we look at that, I'm going to actually go to our council and staff. But when I look at that too, I'm still not sold right now. And again, I've got to really think about this, about the zone text amendment, because I know that it would make it a conforming property, not non-conforming. Helps with financing if you have conforming property. But I don't know. I struggle not having that special permit in there.
So Commissioner, we have, or Mr. Chairman, excuse me, we have not applied for a special permit in there. So we've obviously applied for the 3-part application that we've done under 830G in dozens and dozens of other communities throughout the state. We haven't applied for a special permit here. We're just making it abundantly clear that to get an AHD approved, you don't need a special permit. And I think we're talking about two different things, Mr. Chairman, because you're talking about the text amendment versus just the site plan approval. And then you're also talking about the special permit. So I haven't convinced you yet. Keep in mind, Mr. Chairman, that when we, and I don't know if this was discussed at the last hearing, when we first approached town staff about this, I was actually there before I went out on leave. We sat at a table with members of, I believe, every department, including Mr. Glidden, and we had discussed the aspects of the application, that secondary emergency access out of the site. That was a suggestion, I believe, of the fire marshal. So we incorporated a lot of those edits, and one of the things we discussed with the town, we confirmed again with Mr. Glidden and Attorney D'Onofrio what type of application they wanted us to proceed under. Just a site plan or the 3-part application. And they agreed with our analysis that the cleaner way to do it, quote unquote, cleaner way to do it was the 3-part application. And that is partly why we went forward with that type of application here.
Gotcha. And I'm going to actually, I want to ask our council and our town planner, because again, when you're looking for this text amendment, you're looking to make that for other properties also down the road, not just for this one application. So I understand you came under the 3-part, but I'm also thinking at the next application or the one after that.
So Mr. Chairman, if I may, just before I hand it over to Attorney D'Onofrio, if you look at the AHD, and I'm looking at it right now, the eligible location, we've purposely crafted that to be narrow, meaning that it doesn't apply to every other property in Cheshire, if you will. So it needs to be a lot that's between 12 and 15 acres, and it needs to have frontage on Highland Avenue. We've purposely crafted it so that it is narrow, and it's generally only applied to this one site. The commission can make it as broad as it wants to, of course, to apply to other locations in town. But the point has been generally, and this, again, we've done this in a lot of other municipalities, to draft the regulation so that it primarily applies to this site.
Well, I mean, yeah, 44C2 says what it says, lot size between 12 and 15 acres must have frontage on Highland Avenue. So it's not, I don't think it's at all overly broad or even broad. In terms of the special permit issue, as you've heard multiple times tonight and before tonight under 8-30G, you're limited in terms of conditions of approval or reasonable modifications that you can request the applicant to make to the application. You're limited to what's necessary to protect substantial public interest and health, safety, or other matters the commission can legally consider. So, there isn't much discretion, certainly not the traditional discretion you have in a non-8-30G setting. So I don't have any issue with it. Mike?
Same. Attorney D'Onofrio sums it up.
The auxiliary exit, in any of the plans that we do, like a in and an out instead of in and out in one section, and then that's just auxiliary. Just have an in across from structure and then an out with a right-hand turn on the other.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, I'm trying to follow along with you.
on-
So
on-
the main
on-
entrance, you're asking.
And the entrances, right?
Yep.
You have like a safe entrance that's going to be pavers instead of that being pavers. If it was actually the exit with the off, the concerns that I have, that resolves them, because now that exit would be farther down from where the intersection between the two lanes going northbound are.
So the question is, can we move it further south?
Well, I'm saying instead of having an in and out on the across from structure, have that as just an in. And then the out would be the auxiliary instead. That way you would be able to resolve the issue of the lane split coming in and out at where the lane splits. The lanes are farther down there. They're doubled. They're still doubled. The problem is you're coming up going southbound. You have two lanes. You have a tractor trailer and a car. Then all of a sudden your driveway's coming out at the crest. Nobody has anywhere to go except hit each other. I mean, especially if somebody's going to the Viron, then it's all over. So what I'm saying is that if you just have an in at the crest, right, and then an out farther down below where the lane is doubled, that's safer.
So splitting the entrance into two different drives?
Two different driveways, one lower, one upper, an in and an out.
So it sounds like the commission has some questions that they'd like us to answer before
I mean,
the next
that's,
hearing.
I'm just
That's
looking at it
something
and I'm thinking that that's another way that, you know.
Okay, that's something we will take a look at, because again, the commission has some, I have a list going of things we are going to look into before the next hearing, and we will look at splitting the drive.
I just think everything coming into one driveway across from structure at the top of where it splits is at the crest.
Mhm.
It's too much. It's too much. I wouldn't feel safe driving out of it. You know, that's what I'm trying to say, is that at least if one driveway's out and going right, then they could still do what they want to do, go down and either take a right, take a left. You can get out, you're going to be past the double. It's the split at the top of the hill that concerns me, where the driveway meets.
Okay, so Mr. Tripp, I'm looking at Ben and I'm looking at Tom. We'll take a look at that, and Mark will look at it from a traffic engineering perspective as well.
So with that, like you said, there are a bunch of questions. So do we have a request from the applicant to extend the?
While the exchange is going on, I spoke with the applicant. They've agreed to a 35-day extension for purpose of keeping the public hearing open, so the applicant addressed outstanding issues and concerns of the commission. And Ben signed it, so we're good.
Took the wind out of my sails. I was going to do that. Yeah, yes, Mr. Chairman, we'd be happy to consent to the extension in order
Yes.
to address outstanding questions. Okay. Are there any other questions that we can answer tonight, or any other to-dos?
Bowman?
The dimensional requirements, 44C dash, or point
This is in.
4.2
This is out.
point. Your minimum lot frontage, why is that 60 feet?
It's just getting
Honestly, Commissioner, when we looked at this
because they could go.
started drafting this regulation, we started with Cheshire's existing affordable housing regulation
Just getting.
and modeled it
this
on that,
split
and then
right here.
crafted it as to what we would
Splits.
need for this site
That's
to
the trouble.
apply.
Because you got too much.
I
happening
believe,
right
and again, I don't have the regulation in front of me, I believe there was a requirement in the regulations otherwise for minimum lot frontage,
This
and we
eliminates it from that
incorporated that to
area.
just stay in line with what other districts include in
Well,
their dimensional requirements.
My concern with this is that this is going to be in the industrial zone. So we don't allow any type of development, housing development in an industrial zone. So you're asking for this in a zone that has frontage on Highland Avenue, which basically is in an industrial zone. And I'd like to see the frontages for either an I-1 or an I-2, along with the same setbacks. Especially, you've got a 25-foot front yard setback in a 50-foot building. That's not going to cut it. And I think that's what the chairman was alluding to with the site plan requirement, although the our town attorney has certainly straightened us out on that we really can't have that. So, I think we need to tighten these up a little bit. I don't particularly like this. So I have a problem with some of these, which are very easily changeable.
So we'll take they're easily changeable until they're not. So we'll take a look, compare this, because we need to comply with our own regulation, right? So we'll take a look at the site that we've designed and see if there is anything that we can tweak in this regulation to narrow it more than it's currently drafted.
But your site has got much more than 60 feet of frontage.
Understood, Commissioner. So it's always striking a balance between trying to adhere to what the town already requires, either in the underlying zone or the affordable housing zone. So it's either trying to maintain what the town already has and or change it for what the site needs. So again, we'll examine it. I understand what you're saying, Commissioner. We'll take a look at it, but that's what our thinking is.
Okay, but our regulation is, again, just for residential zones, not
Understood.
for industrial. And again, I'd like to have you look at I really don't think, I think we're talking about semantics here. I really don't think this matters because it certainly doesn't matter to the project that you have now.
Right.
But it does have some concern for
Understood.
me.
Fine. So,
Pardon?
So just,
No, not at all.
I just want to make a clarifying question. Ben Tripp again for the record. So you'd like to see us reflect the existing front yard and all other setbacks that are existing in the I2 or I1 zone?
That's what
That's what you would like.
I'm only speaking for myself.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like to
And
see.
just to echo what Andrea said, we basically took, as you acknowledged, what was in the existing regulation. We're not, as you also acknowledged, our site does not need that small of a front yard, or so we are more than happy to adjust the regulation to fit the site, and I think it will also accommodate what you're requesting.
Thank you for trying to accommodate me.
If we can get a general question to the future, the town population of about 30,000 people, what would be the need for the number of assisted housing approximately?
So with 30,000 people would be the need for assisted housing?
Exactly. What I mean, there's all the statistics about what was required under the statute and all of that, but as a general rule, what percentage of the population would be in need of assisted housing in
I'm
general?
going to look to Ben for that because you had the statistics for that.
It's a complicated question, obviously, and as I said in the presentation, currently 26% of the households in town qualify for some level of affordable housing. 10% is the state, I guess, target to exempt from 8-30G, but I would argue that there's clearly demonstrated a higher.
I mean, supportive.
Supportive. That I would have to.
And I don't need an exact answer, just
Mhm.
generally the percentage of the population.
Okay. I also just want to ask a clarifying question to Commissioner Strollo. So what we're talking about is an entrance only where the current entrance drive is, and then a exit only where the emergency drive is, and I'd propose a right exit only there. Okay.
I don't believe so, Mr. Chairman. We have our to-do list and we will see the commission at the next meeting. Thank you.
I told Sean I give him 3 months before I start yelling at him. We don't need you. That's my grace period.
Lou.
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 council have me do it.
All right.
Yeah.
Ready?
You're right. No, that's-
Okay, I'd like to call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission for Monday, December 11, 2023. We have a roll call. The only addition is that I am here. I'm going to use the chairman's ability to let Mr. Tedesco, who is in the audience here, who didn't get a chance at the last meeting because we didn't have a meeting to say a couple words or a few words, whatever he would like. And the floor is yours, Lou.
It seems a little bit funny on this side, doesn't it?
Address and name?
Louis Tedesco, 1617 Sturbridge Court. I learned how to do that. Actually, see if I can remember, I had three things that I wanted to say very, very briefly. One is, it feels funny being on this side of this room right now tonight. I was thinking today, or on the way over, that actually, if you count my 4 years on the Zoning Board of Appeals, I've been a member of a planning commission in Cheshire for over a third of my life, which is a fairly long life now, as you can see, as you probably know if you read the newspaper during the campaign. We all had to put our ages in the newspaper, but anyway. But I've been a member of a planning and zoning, a land use commission for over a third of my life, and leaving it is kind of a big deal. Especially because as you get older, you'll all find this as you get older. I'm probably the oldest person in the room right now. Woody would have me beat if he's here by a little bit, but not by that much.
He sends his regards, just so you know.
But I was actually hoping to outlast Woody, because Woody is the one person who's been on the commission longer than me.
He will be with the Twinkie.
Pardon me?
He will be with the Twinkie, Woody.
But you start thinking about what your life's body of work with in a lot of different areas. We all have our professions, and we have family, and we have organizations that we've been a part of, but certainly being part of the land use commissions, and especially the Planning and Zoning Commission, has been a big part of my body of work, I think, in terms of my life's body of work. And I appreciate the opportunity to have had the opportunity to do that. The last thing is, it really has been a privilege to be a member of this commission. I have learned something from every single person who sat on the commission with me, even sitting in the audience tonight, listening to what the different comments people had and different solutions to different problems and different issues, made me think, geez, I wish I had thought of all those things. It's my point being that I've learned something from everybody who's been on the commission, and I appreciate having had that opportunity. I'm not disappearing. I mean, I'm not certainly not on the commission now. I may never be on the commission again, but who knows? A seat may open. Somebody may not run in 2 years if I'm still walking around and hale and hearty, as I hope to be. I may run again, who knows? But I wish to thank everybody for the opportunity to have been a member of this great organization for so many years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Lou. I've always loved listening to you and your everything you've provided to this commission. You'll be greatly missed. Hopefully not missed for too long at Cheshire. I'm sure there's some things that you will continue to do for the community, or I know there'll be some things that you'll continue to do for the community. So
I would just have to convince the voters next time.
yeah. Well, anyway, don't be a stranger. We're gonna miss you up here. Okay, can I get a motion to accept the minutes from our public hearing and regular meeting from November 13th, 2023?
Motion to accept minutes.
By Mr. Mercado, second by Mr. Selmont. Any discussion, corrections, anything? Yes, Mr.
Yeah,
Mercado.
I just wanted to add into the public hearing when we spoke on this project, that when I asked, it's missing out of here, when I asked the lady from ARC, that she said at that time that any of that new technology could be in any other development. It wasn't strictly for this one, even though tonight she backpedaled a little bit on that.
Okay, and I was not at this meeting, so I'm not going to vote on this, but I think you have 9 members up here already. With that, any other corrections? Anything? No? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Anyone opposed? And I was abstaining. Okay, so the motion carries 7-2. 702. Right, because Mr. Kaderis got out too. 702. Okay. Communications, Michael's Place, leave of acceptance. You have a motion for
Number
that?
1 and 2 are not ready. I'm just keeping them on your agenda. I shared a copy of the memorandum punch list from the town engineer, just so you're aware of where we stand. That's all.
So they're not.
They're not ready for
nothing.
tonight.
Okay. Approval of 2024 calendar dates. Do we have a motion for that?
Motion to accept.
Motion, Mr. Ricardo, seconded by Mr. Kaderis. I was all in our packets. I'm sure. You have a couple changes? Okay. What do you got?
Mike.
Okay. Do we have to make sure we get the room on the 24th, or is that?
I'll make sure we get the room.
Okay.
And
October
just note-
30th is a Wednesday.
Is, a,
not-
Wed- is that the Octobers are both Wednesdays.
So you're changing two meeting dates, the one in October and the one in April.
No, it just the. They're Wednesdays due to holidays. So we're just noting on the
Yeah.
calendar that both are a Wednesday.
Okay. So basically the only change is the 22nd to the 20th of April to the 24th. And you're going to check on the room to make sure.
Yep.
Okay. What's the 29th?
It's the 29th.
There's a lot of dates that are Wednesday that they're being set that way because of probably a holiday that happens every year. It's just that he missed Passover on the 22nd.
Because you get Memorial.
Because
Day.
there's probably, Memorial.
We don't have to publish the day that it's going to be held. We have to publish the date it's going to be held, correct?
Yes, but the reason why they're Wednesdays is because there's got to be a holiday on that Monday. So that's why they move it to a Wednesday. Passover was not done that correctly, right? I mean, they must have missed it and someone saw it up here. And that's why that's being moved from the 22nd to the 24th, which is a Monday to a Wednesday. But the other ones weren't missed. The other ones were holidays that were caught. And that's why we're having them on Wednesdays, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Since that's over, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? And abstaining? I'll kick Mr. Hilsinger out for this. So it was the 9 of us that with Miss Blake. Number 4, election of officers. I will entertain a motion to elect a chairman for the Planning and Zoning Commission.
I nominate E.J. Kurtz for chairman.
Nomination by Mercado, seconded by, who was it? I don't know, Mr. Natali? Okay. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations?
Move to close the nominations.
Moved, closed. Do I have to vote on that? I don't think you even have to vote on that. I don't think so, but all those in favor of closing nominations signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay. The motion on the table is to elect myself as the Planning and Zoning Commission chairman. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? And I'll take Miss Blake out for that one because there's 9 of us. I'll go back and forth. Okay. I'll now entertain a motion for a vice chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Move that we nominate Jeff Natale for vice chair.
Move Mr. Bowman, seconded by Mr. Ricardo. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations?
Move to close nominations.
Moved and closed. Nominations. All those in favor of closing the nominations signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay, so now the motion on the table is for Mr. Natale to be the vice chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Motion carries unanimously. I'll take Mr. Hilsinger out of that one. Now I'll entertain a motion to elect a secretary for the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Nominate Rob Ricardo.
Nominated by Mr. Mercado, by Mr. Selmont, seconded by Mr. Strollo. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations?
Move to close nominations.
Move to close by Mr. Bowman, seconded by Mr. Selmont. All those in favor of closing nominations signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? And we'll take Mrs. Blake out for that vote. The motion on the table is to put Mr. Picado in as the secretary for the Planning and Zoning Commission. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? And motion carries unanimously, and I'll take Mrs. Blake out of that. Unfinished business, obviously 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3 are still held open. New business, we're scheduling all for the 8th for, is this all the,
That's
the school?
Yep.
That's all ready to go for the 8th? We, no, all of them. They're all in your packet. The only thing, you don't have a thing on the agenda. We'll do it next time. I don't want to do it now for
Yeah,
the aquifer protection.
We'll do it the next time.
That's something we have to do. Yeah, we'll do it another time.
Is it planning conservation development meeting?
We have the dates, but we just set the dates so if we have it, if we need it, right? Is that?
Yeah, and we will be meeting because obviously we're going to start in January working on the POCD.
Yeah.
So the consultant wants to have a meeting.
We didn't finish it. We didn't even, no, the POCD? No, it's been 10 years. Yeah.
So
We're actually doing it differently this time because we've hired a consultant to help us.
correct.
And we're going to do it from the bottom up instead of from the top down. So we're going to actually have traffic surveys and different
Different set of eyes.
ways of
How'd you get
of
that,
deciding
Eric?
this.
You got a whole townwide traffic circle?
I'm paying for it too.
No, we got money from the council. We got money from the council for that.
They gave us money.
Yeah. And Matt just said he's going to match that. So we got a lot of money to do.
Okay, make sure that's in the minute.
All right. So with that, yeah. And I think the chief is definitely.
3 months, this will be done. Last time it took us 2 years. Well, it's probably what's going to take us this time.
That's why we got help this year. Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the regular meeting. Oh, I'm sorry. Was there anything else to come before the
Yeah,
commission?
I talked to Woody. He said hi to everybody. He's feeling much better.
Move Mr. Bowman, seconded by Mr. and Mrs. Blake. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.